Hey everybody, one more module today that I want to cover, and that's on the subject of academic integrity. And if we want to understand what that means, let's talk about what is meant by integrity. And basically, the dictionary definition is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. But I even prefer a better definition in my mind, and that's the state of being whole and undivided. When you have integrity, if a boat has integrity, it's not going to sink. If a plane has integrity, it's not going to follow the sky. If a human has integrity, they're probably not going to do horrible things, whether it's to others or to themselves. And I know that most of you had a module already, probably several throughout your academic career on academic integrity, but it's extremely important. And I want to make sure that everyone understands, because still every year that I teach, there's someone who doesn't quite understand what's meant by academic integrity or plagiarism, and they get into a little bit of challenges with that. So let's make sure that everyone's on the same page here. And by the way, this is also the subject of your assignment for this week. Moving on here. So let's talk about plagiarism. I think we basically know what this is. We had a little discussion about this already, but essentially it's using someone else's words or their ideas. It doesn't have to be just the words that you're copy pasting without crediting them. You can use someone else's words in a paper, but preferably you have to let the reader know that you've taken this idea or the words from somewhere else, and you use usually a quotation marks or citations or both, and then you use a references page at the end of your document. If you do it intentionally, that's really bad. Obviously, that's a lack of integrity, and it's very easy to find this out, and the penalties are quite harsh at Fanshawe, so please don't do it. Doing it unintentionally, it's still bad. The result will be the same. It's a 0 on the assignment for the first one. It's a failing of the course for the second infraction, and it's expulsion from Fanshawe on the third. So let's not get into a situation where it's needed. Now, you probably know about the most obvious type of plagiarism, and that's just copying word for word excerpts from another person's writing or their what they've said out loud. Even if it's a short phrase. Like, my rule of thumb is if you have 3 words in a row and it's identical to someone else's, well, that's a very common statement like, hello, how are you today? You've got to use a citation and quotation marks, and note who is the original author of this quote. So for example, if you said in a paper, it's my opinion that the best way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So actually that's a quote from Walt Disney, right? So you'd need to put that in quotation marks, then give me a citation, which is, we'll talk about in future classes, how to cite this properly with APA format. But right now, the most obvious form of plagiarism is this copy pasting essentially. Second type is using someone else's idea, but turning it into your own words and then not noting the source. So for example, if you were to say in a paper, the best life is one that you closely observe, right? Well, actually Socrates said something very similar. The unexamined life is not worth living. Okay, so it's close enough. It's basically the same idea. Even though you may have had this idea on your own at some point, we know that it's from Socrates, and so you want to give credit to Socrates, even though he's been dead for 2,000 plus years. Third type of plagiarism is, I think I talked about this already. It's taking an excerpt from a source, just changing a couple words around and presenting that idea as your own. And you'd be surprised how many people still do this in college. So for example, my 5th grade book report, it was something like English ships sailed from Plymouth to attack the Armada, were faster and more maneuverable than the larger Spanish galleons, blah, blah, blah. And I rewrote it with using this thesaurus. English boats left Plymouth to battle the Armada and were quicker and more maneuverable. Like, this is a really silly example, right? This was my grade 5 mind trying to, get around the system, I guess. But still people do it. And it's unbelievable that they just try to change a few words and think that they're not going to be caught. But, to me, it's kind of obvious that it's plagiarism. And to turn it in, it's dead obvious, because it will catch stuff like that. I want to give you an actual example I had a few years ago. First student wrote, plan before you write. Before you compose a sentence, do some arranging, right? The student B, who just really looked at someone else's discussion post and copied this, plan before you write. Before I write a sentence, I always do some planning, right? This is basically the same thing, right? You see that. And so this person has plagiarized, and they got a 0 on the assignment, which was really worth 5% anyway. But they got a mark on the record, a permanent mark on the record of an academic infraction, and a 0 on that assignment. So, and if they get a second one, that's it. They fail the course. The next one was write with clarity and impact. The other person said the same thing. First person says you have to ensure that your composing is justifiable while not being short-sighted for your focus craft. Okay, a bit wonky grammar, but that's not the point here. The point is the second person copied almost word for word. Just change a few little things around, maybe hoping I'm not going to catch it. I don't know, but like it's quite obvious to me. And so, you know, this is a very blatant example, but there are examples where they're not so blatant. I'm going to catch them anyway, because I read every paper, you know, basically within several hours of each other. I'm going to see the patterns, right? And if I don't, turn it in will. Now, there's a fourth type of plagiarism that's you know less common. It's referring to an idea that isn't yours, but without indicating whose it is and where it came from. So, for example, if you were to say in a paper, one CEO thinks that many stakeholders are rightly disappointed in Boeing, and it's their job to repair those vital relationships. Okay, but who is the one CEO, right? That was an actual quote from a CEO, and that was from Dave Calhoun in a CNBC article on the web. So you have to cite that one. It's not enough to say, you know, there's this idea, but I'm not going to tell you who it's from. You have to say, or you know, for example, you hear a lot in the media, scientists say blah blah blah, right? But unfortunately, you have to say who are the scientists, where's the paper, what's the source, right? Hope that makes sense. The fourth type of plagiarism. So I want to ask you a few questions and you know try to think about these while you're watching and maybe pause the video and give it some thought. Do I need to Google every idea I have to see if someone else already had that idea and then cite that person? Well, no, I mean that's not realistic, right? It would slow you down unnecessarily. I want you to have your own ideas. It's a good thing. You coming up with your ideas will be a competitive advantage for you in your life and in the workplace. You know, list references to know that you borrowed something from somewhere else, right? If this is truly a genuine idea and you came up with it, then by all means, like share it. If you're unsure, if you think maybe I heard this somewhere like 10 years ago, then yeah, Google it, see if someone else said it or something similar. And then if someone did, or if it's a very common idea, give me the source and the author. Now the exception is for common knowledge. You know, sky is blue, dogs bark. That's common knowledge. You don't need to cite that. You know, it's not worth it. Second question. Hopefully all of you know about APA format, which is the American Psychological Association's rules for referencing. It looks like what we have on the right side of the page here. It's in a specific format, and we do that so that it's standardized so everyone can understand how to go find that source if they want to check it out, right? So the question here is using APA format correctly the same thing as avoiding plagiarism? No, of course not. There are many other formats, for example, MLA, IEEE, Chicago style. In Fanshawe, we use APA. It's the most popular around the world. And by the way, like when you get into the work world, honestly, nobody's using APA. It's really an academic exercise. However, there will be certain jobs you have that you'll need to use some kind of referencing system, right? Whether it's APA or another one. But no matter what you do in a job, you cannot copy, you cannot steal, right? Your employer will be quite upset with you and you'll lose your job. You know, and the reason why we do this in school, it's not just because, you know, to make more work for you. It's to teach you that how to actually reference something. It's to teach you the importance of not just presenting others' ideas as your own, right? So even though you may not use APA in your job, you'll need to learn what APA is teaching you, which is essentially how to show your work, right? It's like in math, you have to show your work to solve a problem to get full marks. It's basically the same idea here. So this is a really, really quick snapshot review of what APA is. You probably remember this, you know, every type of document is a slightly different way to reference that. So if you have a one author plus a year, then you do it in the way that we have here in line 1. If you have 2 authors, it's slightly different. If you have 3 authors, it's the same thing. If it's a website, if it's a YouTube video, if you have a recording or a journal article, there's a different format for each one of those. And PS, nobody remembers those. Nobody remembers off the top of their head, unless you're in academia, how to do APA formatting. You got to have a guide, and I'll give you some guides for this. Third question for you. Are there other forms of academic dishonesty that's not plagiarism? Absolutely. Here's one, coercive citation. If you insert a fake citation in your work, let's say you want to make it look like you did a lot of research, the professor is very impressed with you, but you make up information. That's academic dishonesty. It's academic lack of integrity, right? Manipulating meaning. It's not hard to, the media does this all the time, to manipulate a quote and make it look like something, like there's a different meaning than the original intent, right? This is called taking something out of context. And then forcing it to support your argument, right? You maybe, cut out the first half of the quote, you cut out a not, or you insert a not. It might, help you in the short term. In the long term, it's actually a grounds for, submitting an academic offenses form to the school. And of course, resubmitting assignments. It's not exactly plagiarism, but it kind of is. If you have submitted this same assignment before in another class, even though it's your own words, it doesn't matter. We want to see that you can do the work in this class. It doesn't matter that, yes, you wrote it, it's your ideas. You got to give us something new in this class, because we don't want to see you just clone your work, right? So how do you avoid problems? What I do is just keep good notes. Every time you're doing your research, just open up a Word document and dump copy paste all the information in there. Make sure you have the website link or the book title or whatever it is. And so that where you found this, and you're not going to forget about which book it was in or which website, because then you're in trouble when you try to cite it, right? Don't do your citations at the end. Do them as you go. If you write something in your paper and you want to make sure that it has a citation, do it now. You might forget later. You might forget to put quotation marks. You might forget to, who said it. If you're really confused, ask me. I'm happy to look at your paper in advance of the deadline, or you can submit it and run it through Turnitin in advance. It'll give you a score and check if there's any funny stuff happening. And let me know that you're doing that, and I'll tell you what's wrong with it, if anything. And then when in doubt, just cite. You won't lose marks for citing something. You will get in a little bit of trouble, well, maybe a lot of trouble, if you don't cite something and you should have, right? So on the right side of the page here, this is just how I do my notes when I'm writing an article. I just copy paste the URL, and I do bullets with all the important information from that article, and then I can incorporate it into what I'm writing. Simple stuff, doesn't have to be overcomplicated. So why does this matter in the real world? You might say, well, I don't care if I get caught for cheating in school as long as I get through it, right? Well, that's pretty unethical, first of all, but it's really dangerous and risky. And if you're doing this in school, chances are you're probably going to try to get away with something like that in the work world. Well, it gets way more serious in the work world, because if you plagiarize in your job, you're going to be fired. You might be sued. Your company might lose millions of dollars, and your reputation will be destroyed forever. Don't do it. It's just not worth it. If one person does it, that's something. But if the whole organization starts to do it, now the whole company becomes corrupt. Think about Napster, right? Their whole business model was stealing music. It was all illegal downloading, right? Well, they were shut down and they were forced to pay $26 million. So not a great outcome for them. And the other thing is, it's ridiculous. Like, if you want to come up with something on your own, the world will love that. If you want to copy something, nobody's going to love that. Look at these brands here, right? Nair, Sunbucks, Dyads, KLC. This is ridiculous, right? Someone just tried to capitalize on a strong brand. They flipped it around, and they're trying to sell basically garbage. These companies, I'm sure they're not doing very well. I'm sure. Why was the iPhone a massive success? Didn't copy anybody. Came up with something totally new. You're going to do better in life and in your work if you're being original. So we're going to get to APA in a future class. We'll do a whole module on that. But for now, if you want to look at page 95, there's a guide to APA. There are a few links that I've included here. I will upload this slide deck to the announcement. And you can use all of these tools to basically build your APA citations. For this one on the right, for example, you punch in the name of the book or the journal article or the magazine, and it'll create the citation for you in APA format. I don't mind if you use these tools, as long as you have a proper APA citation. And I'm not talking about most of your assignments. This is for your research paper only. You don't need any research for most of these other assignments. However, if you do choose to include something, yes, you have to cite it. So if you have any questions about that, come find me, send me an email, and we'll chat, okay? All right, thanks, and have a good one.